They said the dome should have shattered when the alien girl lost control, yet it healed itself instead, and the only creature standing at the center of that impossible storm was a human who couldn't even dance. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, subscribe to help this universe grow, and let's begin the story. Evan Rourke stood on the maintenance scaffold, 300 meters above Lumina Plaza, adjusting the atmospheric sensor with methodical precision. Below him, the transparent dome of Lithirian's Belt District curved like a glass cathedral, protecting 10,000 souls from the planet's toxic atmosphere. He didn't look at the crowds. He looked at the micro-fractures in the support beams, the stress indicators on the environmental displays, the tiny cracks that whispered warnings only he could hear. 3 years ago, he had learned that people break faster than buildings. His fiancée had died in a collapse caused by someone else's negligence, but Evan had taken the blame anyway. It was easier to carry guilt than to watch others avoid responsibility. Since then, his life had simplified into a single equation: work, coffee, work, sleep. No dancing, no festivals, no getting close enough to anyone that their collapse might pull him down too. He finished the calibration and descended the scaffold, boots clanging against metal rungs. The plaza below was preparing for the Bioluminescence Festival, 5 days away. Vendors were setting up stalls selling glowing algae sculptures and photoreactive drinks. Children chased ribbons of living light through the air, and in every conversation Evan passed, he heard the same whispered warnings. The Elonith woman is here again. Don't get close. They say if she gets emotional, she releases toxins. I heard she poisoned a vendor last month just by walking past his stall. Evan had read the incident reports. The vendor's stall had collapsed due to corroded supports that predated the Elonith arrival by 6 months. But facts traveled slower than fear. He spotted her across the plaza, standing near a fountain with her hood pulled low. Sayalira. Even from a distance, he could see the way people moved around her, creating an invisible radius of avoidance. Her posture was hunched, shoulders curved inward like she was trying to take up less space in the world. For a moment their eyes met. Hers were lilac, deep and impossibly sad. She looked away first. Evan's co-worker Marcus appeared at his elbow. Hey, the talking wall finally shows his face. Boss wants those dome inspections done before the festival. Apparently the authorities are concerned about energy fluctuations. Energy fluctuations from what? Evan asked, though he already knew the answer. Marcus lowered his voice. The Elonith. They think she might lose control during the festival. Too many emotions, too many people. Could cause structural damage. Evan watched Sayalira drift toward the edge of the plaza, where a group of street dancers was practicing. She stopped, transfixed, watching them move with an expression of such profound longing that something in Evan's chest tightened uncomfortably. She looks dangerous, Marcus said sarcastically. Absolutely terrifying. Evan didn't respond. He was watching the bioluminescent lights in the plaza, the way they seemed to pulse a little brighter when Sayalira walked past. Subtle, probably coincidental, probably nothing. But Evan Rourke had built a career on noticing things that were probably nothing. He pulled up the Elonith incident reports on his datapad and started reading. 6 reported near disasters in the past 3 months. 0 confirmed casualties. 0 confirmed damages. Just fear wrapped in official language. Across the plaza, Sayalira was still watching the dancers, her hidden face turned toward something she clearly wanted, but believed she could never have. Evan thought about his fiancée, who had begged him to dance more, to live more, to stop treating every moment like a structural inspection. He had promised her he would try. He never got the chance to keep that promise. I'm not good with people who might collapse, he muttered to himself, closing the datapad. But as he walked away, something made him look back one more time. Sayalira was gone, faded back into the margins where the city kept its unwanted things. The acid rain started without warning, a common occurrence on Lithirian when the atmospheric processors hiccuped. Evan was halfway between the maintenance depot and his apartment when the first drops began eating through the cheaper fabrics of street vendor canopies. People scattered, ducking into shops and cafes. The nearest shelter was a small place called the Luminous Bean, known more for its tolerable coffee than its ambiance. Evan pushed through the door, shaking droplets from his jacket. The cafe was packed with people who had the same idea. Every table was occupied, every table except one. Selira sat alone in the corner, hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. Her hood was down for once, revealing pale blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, and long silver hair that moved like it was underwater. She was beautiful in an unsettling way, the kind of beauty that made people uncomfortable because they didn't know what to do with it. The other patrons were giving her a wide berth. The waiter was pretending she didn't exist. Evan weighed his options: stand in the rain or sit with the woman everyone claimed was dangerous. He looked at her trembling hands, at the way she kept her eyes fixed on the table as if afraid to meet anyone's gaze. He walked over. "Is this seat taken?" Her head snapped up, lilac eyes wide with shock. The other customers went silent. Someone actually gasped. If you want to risk it," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Risk what?" Evan pulled out the chair and sat down. "Seriously, risk what? Exactly?" The waiter hurried over, concern written across his face. "Sir, I should warn you that—" "I'll have a black coffee," Evan interrupted, "and bring her a fresh tea. That one looks cold." The waiter opened his mouth, closed it, then nodded and retreated. Silence stretched between them. Selira's hands had stopped trembling, but she looked at Evan like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Finally, she spoke. "You're not afraid." "Should I be?" "Everyone else is. They say I'm dangerous, that my emotions cause problems." "What kind of problems?" She hesitated, then seemed to decide honesty was safest. "I'm Eloneth. When we feel things strongly, we release bioquantic energy. It can affect the environment around us. I've been trained to suppress it, but I'm not." "Perfect." Evan considered this. "So you're basically a biological capacitor. Energy reacts to emotional fields, creates minor fluctuations in electromagnetic systems." She blinked. "That's actually accurate. Most people just call me a toxin spreader." "Most people are idiots." The waiter returned with their drinks, set them down with unnecessary speed, and fled. Evan took a sip of his coffee.
"Let me guess. Every time something goes wrong near you, people blame you instead of checking for the actual cause." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You understand? I'm a maintenance technician. When a system fails, there's always a reason. It's never magic, and it's never someone's mere presence. It's corrosion, metal fatigue, improper installation. But those things are boring."
So people invent monsters instead. For the first time since he sat down, Selira's shoulders relaxed slightly. A soft blue light pulsed once in the center of her chest, visible through her thin shirt, then faded. Evan noticed but didn't react. "That your energy field?" "You saw that?" She looked mortified. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Relax, it was pretty, like a nightlight." She stared at him like he'd just told her the sky was green. Then she laughed, a surprised burst of sound that made the light pulse again, brighter this time. Several customers leaned away from their table. "See?" Evan gestured around. "Look at them. You just laughed, released a little energy, and nothing exploded. No one's poisoned. The building's still standing. But the reports? I read them. 6 incidents in 3 months, 0 confirmed damages, 0 casualties. You know what that tells me? Either you're the least effective, dangerous person in galactic history, or someone's lying about what really happened." Selira's expression shifted from hope to fear, to something more complicated. "Why are you being kind to me?" "I'm not being kind. I'm being accurate." Evan finished his coffee. "Fear doesn't keep domes standing. Calculations do. Facts do. And the facts say you're harmless." But as he said it, looking into those impossible lilac eyes, Evan realized his calculations might be missing a variable he hadn't accounted for in 3 years: hope. Evan started seeing Sailira more often, not deliberately, of course. His routes just happened to intersect with hers. The morning inspection of the eastern supports passed by the market where she bought supplies. The afternoon calibration of the atmospheric filters took him past the small park where she sat reading on a bench. Each time they crossed paths, she looked surprised, then cautiously hopeful. Each time he nodded. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just existed in proximity, which seemed to be enough for both of them. The rumor mill noticed. By the third day, Marcus cornered Evan in the equipment bay. "People are saying you're being poisoned, that she's doing it slowly so no one notices until it's too late." "People are morons," Evan said, checking the pressure seals on his diagnostic kit. "I'm serious." Boss pulled me aside. "He's worried you're compromised, that you're going to miss something critical because your brain's being affected." Evan looked up from his work. "Tell the boss if he has concerns about my competence, he can review my inspection logs. I've flagged 17 potential issues this month, 3 of which were critical. That's twice my normal rate. Turns out having someone to talk to makes me sharper, not duller." Marcus left shaking his head, but he wasn't wrong about one thing. The rumors were getting worse. Evan heard them everywhere. The human technician and the Elenith. A contamination waiting to happen. A disaster in slow motion. Sailira heard them too. She tried to distance herself, taking longer routes to avoid his path. But Evan was a man who solved problems, and this problem had a solution. He hacked into the city's sensor network, something he absolutely wasn't authorized to do, and pulled up the historical data for every reported Elenith incident. Then he cross-referenced it with maintenance logs and environmental reports. The pattern was obvious once you looked. Every single incident had a mundane explanation: faulty wiring, corroded supports, manufacturing defects in energy conduits. In every case, Sailira had been nearby, and in every case, authorities had blamed her instead of admitting to infrastructure failures. Evan compiled the evidence and sent it to his supervisor with a simple note: "Recommend reviewing equipment maintenance protocols instead of harassing innocent residents." He got called into the boss's office within an hour. "You're suspended," Director Chen said, not meeting his eyes. 2 weeks without pay. "For what? Doing your job for you? For unauthorized access to secured systems? For insubordination? For—" Chen trailed off, then sighed. "The Commercial Council is putting pressure on us, Evan. The Elenith are competing with local cartels for trade contracts. Someone wants them gone, and creating a public safety crisis is the easiest way to do it. So I'm being punished for exposing corruption. You're being punished for making powerful people look bad." Chen leaned forward. "I believe you about the girl. I do. But belief doesn't pay my salary or protect my family. Take the suspension. Keep your head down. Forget about the Elenith." Evan stood. "Can't do that." "Why not?" He thought about his fiancée dancing in their apartment the night before she died, laughing as she tried to teach him a simple waltz. He thought about Sailira watching the dancers in the plaza with that expression of impossible longing. He thought about 3 years of safety and isolation and slowly forgetting what it felt like to care about anything. "Because I'm tired of things falling apart while I watch," he said. That evening he found Sailira in the small park. She looked up from her book, and he could see she'd been crying. The glow in her chest was erratic, pulsing irregularly. "I heard about your suspension," she said. "I'm so sorry, this is my fault." "It's not. It's the fault of people who profit from fear." "I should leave Letherian." "Maybe then—" "Don't." The word came out harder than he intended. He sat down next to her. "The festival is in 3 days. Elenith don't dance at festivals, right?" She looked confused. "No. Our energy amplifies with strong emotions. Dancing would mean losing control." "It would be." "Dangerous?" he supplied. "Yes." "What if someone stayed close, like an anchor?" Her eyes widened. "No one's ever stayed close enough to find out." Evan met her gaze and saw the girl beneath the fear, the one who just wanted to dance, to be seen, to exist without apology. He saw the part of himself he'd buried 3 years ago. "Then I guess we're about to find out," he said. Evan's plan was simple, possibly stupid, and definitely unauthorized: prove publicly that Elenith weren't dangerous by having Sailira dance at the festival. The execution, however, required help. His first ally was unexpected. The waiter from the luminous bean appeared at his door the morning after his suspension. "I saw what you did," the man said, handing Evan a data chip. Security footage from the cafe, the way her energy responded to positive emotion. "It's not dangerous. It's beautiful. I was wrong to be afraid." His second ally was more mysterious. An elderly Elenith man, his skin a deeper blue than Sailira's and marked with intricate silver patterns, began appearing wherever Evan went. He never spoke at first, just observed with eyes that seemed to see through walls. The third was Maya Chen, a junior technician who'd heard about Evan's suspension and was furious. "My brother's Elenith," she said. "He left Letherian because of the discrimination. I won't let them do this to someone else." But the most important ally was Sailira herself, and convincing her was the hardest part. They met on the observation deck at the dome's peak, a place Evan used for late-night maintenance when he needed to think. The city spread below them, bioluminescent rivers flowing through streets like captured starlight. "Tell me about your world," Evan said. "Your real world, not the one people invented." Sailira was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of generations. "We used to be nomads, traveling between worlds, dancing to stabilize planetary energy fields. We were healers, stabilizers. Then we forgot. The knowledge faded, and only the power remained. Now we're refugees, scattered across the galaxy, afraid of what we are." "The dreams you have," Evan said. "The ones you mentioned. The dancing." She looked at him sharply. "How did you know about those?" "You talk in your sleep. Yesterday, in the park, when you dozed off reading." A faint blush darkened her cheeks. "They're always the same. Ancient patterns, movements I've never learned but somehow know. My family called them delusions, proof I was broken." "What if they're memories?" Evan gestured to the city below. "This whole place runs on energy fields. Magnetic containment, atmospheric processing, structural integrity. What if your people didn't forget? What if some of you still remember and everyone's too afraid to let you try?" She moved to the railing, and as she relaxed, energy began to flow from her skin in gentle waves. The air around them shimmered, and suddenly the space above the dome filled with aurora-like colors, dancing to a rhythm Evan could almost hear. "This is what happens when I'm happy," Sailira whispered. "When I'm not afraid. It just flows. It's incredible. Why would anyone want to suppress this? Because beauty from something different is terrifying to people who need the world to make sense." Evan moved closer, and the energy field didn't hurt. It felt like standing in warm rain. "Then let's make them see. At the festival, in front of everyone. I could lose control. I could hurt people. Hurt you. You won't. How can you know? Because I've spent 3 years studying structural failures. I know the difference between something breaking and something transforming." He held out his hand. "Trust me?" Sailira looked at his outstretched hand for a long time. Around them, the aurora danced. Finally, slowly, she reached out and took it. The energy pulsed through their connected hands, bright and warm. Below, several sensor alarms went off in the maintenance station. Evan laughed. "Okay, we need practice. Lots of practice." The elderly Elenith chose that moment to make himself known, stepping out from behind a support column. "You are doing something very old," he said, his voice like gravel smoothed by rivers, "and very dangerous. Do you know what you're attempting?" "Teaching someone to trust themselves," Evan replied. The old man's eyes crinkled with something that might have been approval. "Humans, You attempt the impossible without even understanding what impossible means. He looked at Celira. The anchorage. That's what you're dreaming. It requires perfect synchronization between a conductor and an anchor. It hasn't been performed in 3 centuries. Can she do it? Evan asked. The question isn't whether she can, it's whether you can. The old man studied Evan with unsettling intensity. Anchors aren't chosen for strength. They're chosen for steadiness, for the ability to remain calm when the universe is screaming. He paused. You've already lost everything once. Can you risk it again? Evan thought about the suspension, the rumors, the careful walls he'd built around himself. Then he looked at Celira, who was watching him with desperate hope. Yes, he said simply. The old man smiled. Then you may actually survive this. But first, you need to learn to dance. And human, no offense, but your species moves like broken machinery. Despite everything, Evan laughed. It was the first real laugh he'd had in 3 years. They chose an abandoned sub-level storage facility for the rehearsal. Evan had disabled the security feeds. Or so he thought. Kira set up portable lights while Torvin kept watch at the entrance. The elder had taught Evan basic grounding techniques, mental exercises that supposedly helped anchor emotional energy. Evan felt ridiculous doing them, but Celira had smiled when he'd tried, and that made it worthwhile. You don't have to do this, she said as they stood facing each other in the empty space. If I lose control down here, the structural damage could collapse the entire sector. Then don't lose control. That's not how it works. Emotion isn't logical. It doesn't follow technical specifications. Lucky for you, I'm excellent at improvising when systems fail. She took his hands. Her skin was warm, almost feverish, and he could feel the energy humming beneath the surface like high-voltage current. If it hurts, she said, let go immediately. If it kills me, I'll consider it. Evan, I'm serious. So am I. She began to move, and he followed clumsily. He had the rhythm of a broken servo and the grace of a cargo container. But he held on. The energy started as a tingle, then escalated to pins and needles, then to something that felt like his hands were falling asleep and waking up simultaneously. He didn't let go. The lights in the facility began to respond. Not flickering, not failing, but dancing. They moved in patterns synchronized with Celira's steps, creating cascades of color that painted the walls in living art. Evan, it's working. Her voice was filled with wonder. I'm actually controlling it. Told you. Data over drama. She laughed, spinning, and the energy exploded outward in a beautiful, controlled wave. For 3 perfect minutes, they danced in the center of a storm that could have destroyed buildings, but instead created something that looked like hope given form. When they finally stopped, both breathing hard, Celira was crying. I did it. With you, I actually did it. Evan's hands were numb, his arms trembling, but he was grinning like an idiot. 2 days until the festival. We're going to prove everyone wrong. Kira approached, her face carefully neutral. That was incredible. I recorded it for documentation, so we have proof of concept. Good thinking, Evan said. It wasn't good thinking. 12 hours later, the video had leaked to every major newsfeed on Letherian. The Commercial Council held an emergency session, and security forces arrived at Evan's apartment with an arrest warrant. Not for him, for Celira. He found her at the cafe, their table, surrounded by armed guards. She looked small and terrified, and the energy field around her was spiking dangerously. Unauthorized energy activation in a civilian zone, the lead officer announced. By order of the Commercial Council, you're being detained for public safety evaluation. She didn't hurt anyone. Evan pushed through the crowd. Unauthorized is unauthorized. She's a Class 3 energy risk. Celira's eyes found Evan's across the space. Don't. They'll arrest you too. I don't care. I do. Her voice broke. You don't understand. If they lock me up, if they trap me with these emotions, I won't be able to control it. The energy will build until it explodes. They're creating the exact disaster they claim to be preventing. The guards moved in. Evan tried to follow, but Torvan held him back. You can't help her if you're in a cell too. Evan watched them lead Sayalira away, her wrists bound in energy-dampening restraints that made her flinch with every step. The crowd muttered their approval. The dangerous alien was contained. Order was restored. Evan stood in the empty plaza, his hands still tingling from the dance, and realized exactly what had happened. The victory had been the trap. Someone had made sure the video leaked. Someone wanted Sayalira detained right before the festival, when her emotional state would be most volatile. Someone was engineering their incident. He turned to Kira, who stood at the edge of the crowd, her face stricken with guilt. And he knew. How much did they pay you? His voice was flat, dead. Evan, I'm sorry. My family. They're sick. The medical bills. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't know they'd arrest her. I thought they just wanted evidence to increase security. I'm so sorry. You didn't betray me, Evan said quietly. You betrayed someone who never had a chance to trust anyone before, and you took that from her. He walked away, leaving Kira sobbing in the plaza. 2 days until the festival. Sayalira was locked in an energy containment cell, her emotions spiraling, a ticking bomb that would validate every fear the council had manufactured, and Evan had no idea how to stop it. Evan spent 16 hours breaking into the commercial council's encrypted files. He was a maintenance technician, not a hacker, but desperation made him creative and rage made him thorough. What he found was worse than he'd imagined. The council hadn't just fabricated incidents, they'd actively sabotaged equipment in areas Sayalira frequented, creating malfunctions that could be blamed on her energy field. They'd bribed medical examiners to classify random illnesses as possible Elenith exposure. They'd systematically constructed a narrative of danger where none existed. Because Elenith merchants were undercutting their mineral trade by 40%. It was never about safety, it was always about money. But there was more. Deep in the archived files, he found historical records about the Elenith species. Not the propaganda, but the truth. Centuries ago, the Elenith had been known as world singers. They'd traveled to unstable planets, using their emotional energy to harmonize tectonic shifts, stabilize atmospheric pressure, even heal tears in space-time fabric. They'd been revered, sought after, essential. Then they'd lost the knowledge. The techniques had faded over generations, becoming legend, then myth, then forgotten entirely, except for the conductors, born once every few generations, marked with the ancient patterns, capable of channeling energy on scales that defied physics. They needed training, discipline, and most critically, an anchor. Someone whose emotional stability could ground their power, someone who loved them unconditionally enough to stand at the center of their storm. Without an anchor, a conductor was exactly what the council claimed, dangerously unstable. With an anchor, they were miracles. Sayalira was a conductor, and she was locked in a cell, terrified, alone, spiraling toward the catastrophic release that would justify her execution. Evan tried to access the detention center. They barred him at the entrance. He tried to call in favors with security. They ignored him. He tried everything except the one thing the Elder had confronted him about. The Elder found him in the plaza at midnight, staring at the detention center tower. "You found the truth," the old Elenith said. "She's a conductor. You knew." "I knew. I've been watching her since she arrived on Lithirion, hoping she'd find her anchor before the fear consumed her." He studied Evan carefully. "The question I asked you before. Do you love her?" "I barely know her." That wasn't the question. Evan thought about Sayalira sitting alone in that cafe, resigned to isolation, about her smile when he'd simply sat down without fear, about her laughter when she danced in the storage facility, free for the first time in years, about the way she looked at the dancers with such painful longing, about how she'd told him to save himself rather than follow her into arrest. "I don't know if it's love," he said quietly, "but I know I can't leave her in there alone. I know I'd rather stand in her storm than watch her drown in everyone else's fear. I know that every moment I'm not trying to reach her feels like structural failure in my chest." "That's love, you idiot human." The elder almost smiled. "Messy, illogical, catastrophically inconvenient love, the only kind that works as an anchor." "Then how do I get to her?" "You can't. Not until the festival. The council scheduled a public hearing for that evening. They'll present their evidence, call for her expulsion, and when she inevitably loses control under that emotional pressure, they'll have their incident. Unless she has her anchor. Unless she has her anchor." At that moment, every light in the detention center flickered. Alarms blared. Emergency systems activated. Sayalira was braking. Evan ran for the entrance. Guards blocked him. "Sir, step back. Energy containment failure in progress." "Let me through. I can stabilize her. No one's going near her. If that field explodes, it'll take out 3 city blocks." Evan could see her through the reinforced windows, curled in the center of her cell, surrounded by a vortex of blue energy that was tearing equipment apart. She was screaming his name. He screamed back, "I'm here! Sayalira! I'm here!" But she couldn't hear him. The energy was too loud. The fear was too complete. And then the lights exploded, plunging the entire district into darkness. When emergency power restored 30 seconds later, Sayalira was unconscious. The guards had induced a medical coma, the only way to prevent total catastrophic release. She'd be kept that way until the hearing, drugged, helpless, unable to defend herself. Evan stood outside the detention center, his hands pressed against the reinforced glass, and made a decision. If they wanted their incident at the festival, he'd give them one. But it wouldn't be the disaster they expected. It would be proof that love was stronger than fear, even if that proof required him to break every rule, defy every authority, and stand in the center of a storm that could kill him. He'd spent 3 years keeping structures from falling. It was time to keep a person from falling instead. 3 city blocks without power, 17 injuries from the energy surge, millions in equipment damage. The Commercial Council called emergency sessions. News feeds declared the Illinois threat confirmed. Proposals for species-wide expulsion from Litherian passed preliminary votes by overwhelming margins. Sayalira remained in induced coma, stable but imprisoned in her own mind. And Evan sat in his apartment, staring at a photograph of Maya that he'd kept hidden for 3 years. She'd been laughing in the photo, trying to teach him a dance step he kept getting wrong. The last photo before the collapse, before he'd chosen work over one more dance, before his obsession with preventing failures had caused him to miss the only moment that mattered. He'd spent 3 years telling himself he was preventing disasters by checking systems, maintaining structures, keeping everything from falling apart. But people had fallen anyway, Maya, and now Sayalira. Maybe the problem wasn't the systems, maybe it was him. The door chimed. He ignored it. It chimed again. Kira stood in the hallway, her eyes red from crying. "Evan, please, I need to explain." "You already did. You needed money. The council provided. You sold out someone who never hurt anyone." His voice was empty. "What else is there to explain?" "I hacked the council's files, everything you found, and more. I sent it to every news outlet on Litherian. Anonymous drops. By morning, everyone will know the truth about the fabricated incidents." Too late. They already have their proof. Sayalira lost control. People got hurt. No amount of historical context changes what happened. But if people knew the council engineered it, if they understood she was provoked, they won't care. Fear is louder than facts. I should know. I've been ignoring facts about my own life for 3 years. Kira left. Evan returned to staring at Maya's photograph. In the plaza below, Torvin had tried to organize a protest. 20 people showed up. Then security dispersed them. Then Torvin sent Evan an apologetic message saying he'd tried. Everyone had tried. Everyone had failed. The elder found him on the apartment balcony as artificial dawn broke over the dome. "The hearing is this evening. During the festival opening ceremony, maximum visibility. They want the population to see the dangerous alien contained, to justify her expulsion. She's in a coma. How is she supposed to defend herself? She's not. That's the point. The elder was quiet for a moment. Unless you wake her. I tried. They won't let anyone near her. There's another way. During the hearing, they have to bring her into the public forum. Standard legal procedure. She'll be conscious but restrained. It's the only moment you'll have access. Access to do what? Stand next to her while they exile her? Watch her energy field kill people when the stress becomes too much. Or anchor her. Prove that a conductor with proper grounding isn't a weapon, that she never was. Evan laughed bitterly. I'm a maintenance technician. I can barely dance. What makes you think I can anchor someone with the power to reshape planetary fields? Because she loves you back, and that's the only thing that matters. The words hit like structural failure. Love. He'd been so focused on saving her, on proving the truth, on fighting injustice, that he'd never stopped to acknowledge the impossible thing growing in his chest. He didn't just want to save Sailira. He wanted to wake up next to her, to hear her laugh without fear, to watch her dance without hiding, to be the person she didn't have to face the universe alone with. He wanted her, all of her, Storm included. As if summoned by the thought, he found a data chip tucked under his door. No note, just the chip. He loaded it, a video file. Sailira, before her arrest, sitting in the storage facility after their successful rehearsal. She was talking to someone off camera. Kira, thank you for recording that. I want to remember today, the day I learned I'm not broken. Pff, you really care about him, don't you? Sailira's smile was everything. He sat down when everyone else ran away. He chose facts over fear. He made me believe I could be more than the monster they see. She touched the patterns on her arms. If something happens to me, make sure he knows. Make sure he knows that for the first time in my life, I felt like I could be beautiful instead of dangerous, because he looked at me and saw possibility instead of threat. The video ended. Evan sat in the darkness of his apartment, holding a recording of someone telling him exactly what he needed to hear before everything fell apart, and he made a decision. If the hearing was during the festival, if Sailira would be conscious and vulnerable, if the council expected catastrophe, then he'd give them a miracle instead. He just needed to figure out how to dance well enough to anchor a storm in 12 hours without killing them both. Evan spent the morning committing multiple crimes. Breaking into the medical detention center required disabling 17 security systems, rerouting 6 surveillance feeds, and convincing a sympathetic nurse that he was authorized for compassionate visitation. The nurse, who'd read Kira's leaked files about the council's fabrications, decided to develop sudden blindness regarding unauthorized visitors. Sailira lay on the medical bed, energy dampeners wrapped around her wrists and temples. Her skin had lost its luminescence. She looked small and broken, and nothing like the person who'd created auroras just days ago. He took her hand. The dampeners sparked. Alarms sounded. He didn't let go. Sailira, I need you to wake up. I need you to know I'm still here. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. When they found his face, tears spilled over. You came. Her voice was raw. Even after I hurt people. Even after I proved them right. You didn't prove anything except that torture produces exactly the response torturers expect. He gripped her hand tighter. The council engineered your breakdown, but we're going to prove they were wrong about everything else? How? I'm being expelled tonight, during the opening ceremony. Maximum humiliation. During the ceremony, in front of everyone, with me standing next to you. He met her eyes. We're going to dance. She laughed, sharp and bitter. I'm restrained, I'm drugged. I can barely think straight. Then I'll think for both of us. I'll be your anchor, like the old conductors used to have. Evan, you don't understand. The conductor's dance requires perfect synchronization. One wrong step and the energy feedback could kill you. You're not trained. You barely know the basic movements. I know that you deserve better than dying alone in a cell because people are afraid of beauty they don't understand. I know that I'd rather die trying to prove you're not a monster than live knowing I let them destroy you." The dampeners sparked again, stronger this time. Energy leaked around the edges, responding to emotion. "You absolute idiot human," she whispered. "I love you." "I know, the feeling's mutual, which is why this is going to work." A commotion outside the room interrupted them. Security had finally responded to the alarms, but they didn't arrive first. Kira did, with a data drive. "Evidence files, everything. I'm testifying at the hearing. I'm confessing to the leak and explaining exactly who paid me to do it." Torvin arrived with 50 people. "We're protesting, peacefully, visibly. They can't sweep this under the surface anymore." The Elder arrived with 12 other Elenith, all bearing the faded patterns of former conductors. "If you're anchoring a world singer, you need to know the actual steps. We have 3 hours. Let's hope that's enough." And then, impossibly, the nurse returned with another figure. The detention center director, a stern woman named Kelos, who'd processed Celira's arrest. "I read the files," Kelos said quietly. "My entire career, I've imprisoned people based on council classifications. Never questioned, never investigated." She looked at Celira. "I'm releasing you under my authority. If the council wants you detained after the hearing, they'll need actual evidence instead of manufactured fear." The dampeners deactivated. Celira gasped as her energy surged back, wild and uncontrolled. The lights in the medical center flickered dangerously. Evan stepped directly into the field, ignoring the pins and needles sensation that escalated to burning. "Breathe. I'm here. You're not alone." The energy steadied, not calm, but controlled, anchored. The Elder nodded approval. 3 hours until the ceremony. You need to learn movements that took our ancestors decades to master. This is impossible." "Good," Evan said. "Impossible is my baseline." They practiced in the plaza, surrounded by growing crowds. Word had spread through the leaked files, through Torvin's network, through simple human curiosity about the alien girl and the technician who refused to let her fall. Evan learned the steps, barely. He missed beats, stumbled over transitions, and generally performed like someone whose coordination had been outsourced to a malfunctioning robot. But he didn't let go of Celira's hand, and every time he stumbled, she steadied him. Every time her energy spiked, he anchored her. They were a disaster individually. Together, they were something else entirely. As artificial sunset painted the dome in colors that presaged the festival, Evan and Celira stood at the edge of the plaza, watching the ceremony preparations. "You sure about this?" she asked quietly. "No, absolutely not. This is the worst plan I've ever had." He squeezed her hand. "But it's also the only one where we both walk away free. So yes, I'm sure. If this works, everything changes. If this works, we prove that fear was lying all along. That you were never the danger. That love is stronger than manufactured hatred. And if it doesn't work, then we'll have one hell of a dance before we die." She laughed through tears. "You're insane." "I maintain life support systems using improvised fixes and desperate hope. Insane is literally my job description." The festival music began. The ceremony was starting. And somewhere in the council chambers, politicians prepared to make an example of an alien girl who'd dared to exist differently. They had no idea what was about to hit them. The hearing took place in the central plaza, converted into a makeshift tribunal. Thousands of citizens gathered, drawn by the festival and the spectacle of justice. The commercial council sat in elevated seats, looking down at the platform where Celira stood, restrained between security guards. Evan pushed through the crowd. Guards moved to intercept him. The crowd moved faster, forming a human barrier. "Let him through," someone shouted. "She deserves an anchor," another voice called. The council leader, a corpulent man named Vex, sneered at the commotion. "Order. This hearing will proceed according to law. The defendant stands accused of unauthorized energy activation resulting in public endangerment." "She was provoked!" Kira's voice rang out. She stood at the edge of the platform, data drive held high. "I have evidence that the Commercial Council fabricated incidents, bribed officials, and deliberately created conditions designed to force her energy release." Vex's face darkened. "That evidence was obtained illegally." "But it's true." Director Kilo stepped forward. "I've reviewed the files. Every incident attributed to Elenith Energy was either equipment failure or deliberate sabotage. This entire proceeding is built on manufactured fear." The crowd murmured. Vex slammed his hand on the desk. "Regardless of past incidents, 3 days ago she caused massive damage. People were injured. That's documented fact." "Because you locked her in a cell designed to maximize emotional distress." Evan had reached the platform. "You engineered the exact disaster you claimed to prevent. Security? Remove this man." The guards moved. The crowd moved faster. Suddenly, Evan was surrounded by humans and aliens alike, a protective circle that security couldn't break without causing a riot. "The law is clear," Vex said, his voice tight with fury. "Elenith who cannot control their energy present existential risk. The defendant will be expelled from Letherian, along with all members of her species." "Then let her prove control." The elder stepped onto the platform. "Allow the traditional conductor's dance. If she can anchor her energy safely, in front of this entire assembly, you have no grounds for expulsion. And if she fails? If her energy kills people? Then you were right. But if she succeeds, you admit your laws were based on lies." Vex calculated, smiled. "Agreed. Let her try. When she fails, there will be no more debate." He thought he'd won. He thought fear and physics were on his side. He'd never seen what love could anchor. Selira's restraints were removed. She stood in the center of the platform trembling. Evan stepped beside her, taking her hands. They were ice cold. "I can't do this," she whispered. "There are too many people. Too much fear. I can feel their terror like weight. Then feel me instead. Look at me. Not them. Just me." The festival music began. Traditional, ceremonial, achingly beautiful. They began to dance. Immediately, Selira stumbled. Energy spiked. The platform cracked. People screamed. The council rose, vindicated. "Steady," Evan whispered. "Breathe. I'm here." They started again. This time, Evan missed a step. Their synchronization broke. Energy whipped outward, shattering decorative lights. The crowd surged backward. "I'm killing you!" Selira gasped. She could feel the energy burning his hands, cooking his nerves. "You're not. Keep going." Third attempt. The elder sang the ancient cadence. The other conductors joined. The song resonated through the plaza, and for a moment, Selira felt something click. Muscle memory from a time before time. The patterns on her skin began to glow. But then Vex gave a signal. Security guards rushed the platform. "She's losing control! Evacuate!" The crowd panicked. Selira's concentration shattered. Energy exploded outward, a shock wave that knocked everyone within 10 meters flat. The dome itself groaned, stress sensors screaming warnings. Evan's hands were bleeding now, burned by energy contact. He didn't let go. "Selira!" he shouted over the chaos. "Look at me! Not the fear, not the hatred, not the danger. Look at me." Her eyes found his, wild, terrified, drowning. "You are not a monster," he said, his voice somehow cutting through the noise. "You are not poison. You are not danger. You are beauty that people feared because they're too small to understand it. You are power that could reshape worlds. You are mine, and I am yours, and I trust you more than you trust yourself." Something broke. Not structure, not physics. The fear broke. Sailira stopped fighting her power, stopped repressing, stopped apologizing for existing. She let it flow. The energy that had been destroying became creative. The bioluminescent lights of the festival didn't shatter, they synchronized. Every light in the city, every glow organism, every piece of luminescent technology responded to her rhythm. The patterns on her skin blazed with ancient light. Above them, the artificial sky erupted in colors that no species had names for. The dome's sensors, instead of screaming failure, registered something impossible: energy reinforcement. The cracks from her earlier outburst weren't just sealed, they were healed, the molecular structure stronger than original construction. Evan and Sailira danced, and reality danced with them. The crowd stopped fleeing, stopped screaming, started watching in awe as the technician and the alien girl created something that looked like the universe remembering joy. The elder wept. A true conductor. After 3 generations, she's anchored. Vex tried one last time. Guards, stop them! Torvin stepped in front of the nearest guard, then Kira, then Director Kelos, then hundreds of citizens forming a wall around the dancers. No, they said, together. No more. And in the center of it all, Evan held Sailira as energy poured through them both. His hands were ruined, nerves damaged permanently. He'd never feel anything normally again, but he could feel her, and that was enough. When the dance finally ended, they collapsed together, both barely conscious. The plaza was silent. Then someone started clapping, then another, then the entire city. Vex stared at the crowd, at the healed dome, at the undeniable proof that everything he'd built his career on was a lie. "The charges are dismissed," he said quietly. Then louder, "All charges dismissed. The laws regarding Elonith energy are under review." Sailira, barely able to speak, looked at Evan. "You're hurt. Your hands." "Small price," he whispered, "for proving love is stronger than fear." She kissed him then, in front of everyone, energy still dancing around them, and the city that had feared her cheered. 6 months later, Evan stood on the same maintenance platform where he'd first brought Sailira to dance in secret. The view hadn't changed. The city below, the artificial sky above, the steady hum of life support systems keeping thousands alive. What had changed was him. His hands were wrapped in specialized gloves, technology developed specifically for nerve damage caused by energy contact. He'd never regained full sensation. Medical scans showed permanent scarring in the neural pathways. He didn't regret a single second. "You're brooding again," Sailira said, climbing onto the platform beside him. She wore the conductor's robes now, the official garments that acknowledged what she'd always been. The patterns on her skin glowed softly in the evening light. "I don't brood. I contemplate structural integrity." "You absolutely brood. It's very human of you." She'd changed too. The terrified girl who'd hidden under cloaks had become someone who taught other Elonith to embrace their power instead of fearing it. She'd found 3 more conductors in the past months, all hiding, all convinced they were monsters. She was showing them otherwise. The commercial council had been dissolved. Vex and 4 others were under investigation for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted genocide through bureaucratic means. The laws regarding Elonith had been completely rewritten, based on actual science instead of manufactured fear, and every week in the central plaza, Sailira danced. Not for judgment, not for proof, but because she finally could. "I got a message from Maya's family today," Evan said quietly. "They saw the footage from the hearing. They said she would have loved knowing I finally learned to dance." Sailira took his gloved hand carefully. "Do you think she'd approve of us? She spent years trying to teach me that living means risking falling, that the only real failure is never trying." He smiled. "Yeah, she'd approve. Probably laugh at how badly I still dance, but she'd approve." Below them, the weekly festival was beginning. Families gathered. Children played. Species that had barely tolerated each other 6 months ago now shared food, stories, music. "Do you ever regret it?" Saylyra asked. "What you lost saving someone like me?" Evan looked at his hands, then at her. "I lost sensation here." Here he touched the gloves. "But I gained the ability to feel here." He touched her chest, where her energy pulsed steady and strong, then his own. "Humans are terrible at cost-benefit analysis. We always choose to feel more, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because feeling something real is worth more than feeling nothing safely." That's not logical. No, it's human. We're magnificent disasters who choose love over survival, emotion over efficiency, connection over safety. We're a species that looks at a storm and thinks, "Maybe I should dance in it." She laughed, and the bioluminescent lights responded, brightening. "You're impossible. And you love me for it." Desperately, inconveniently, completely. They descended to the plaza together. The music was already playing. Evan still danced like a maintenance drone with rhythm problems. Saylyra moved like starlight given form. Together, they created something that shouldn't work, but somehow did. Kira watched from the crowd, working as Evan's assistant now, dedicating herself to making sure no one else fell through society's cracks. Torvin served drinks at his expanded cafe, the one that explicitly welcomed all species. Director Kellos had started a program reviewing every detention based on species classification, finding dozens of cases built on fear instead of fact. The elder stood at the edge, watching his protégé dance with her anchor, and felt something he hadn't felt in 3 generations: hope for his people's future. As the dance ended, Evan and Saylyra stood in the center of the plaza, surrounded by cheering crowds. She glowed with energy that could have destroyed cities, but instead created beauty. He held her with damaged hands that could barely feel anything except her. "They said I'd poison you," she whispered. "They were right." He kissed her forehead. "You poisoned me with hope when I'd given up. Poisoned me with purpose when I only existed. Poisoned me with love when I thought I didn't deserve it. And if that's poison, then I never want the cure." The crowd dispersed. The festival continued. Life went on. But up on the maintenance platform, 2 figures remained, dancing to music only they could hear. A human who'd learned that sometimes you had to risk falling to really live. An alien who'd learned that power wasn't the same as danger. Together, they'd proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology, or violence, or even courage. It was the stubborn, irrational, magnificent refusal to let someone dance alone. Years later, when other conductors asked Saylyra how she'd found her anchor, how she'd overcome the fear, how she'd transformed from monster to miracle, she always gave the same answer. "I met a human who was very bad at dancing, but very good at staying. And he taught me that the opposite of fear isn't bravery. It's presence, just showing up, standing close, and refusing to let someone face their storms alone." "And that's what humans do?" they'd ask. "That's what the best of them do," she'd say, touching the glowing patterns on her skin. "They look at the impossible and say, 'Yes, but what if we tried anyway?' They see someone drowning and dive in without checking if they can swim. They choose love when logic says run." That sounds inefficient. It is, catastrophically so. She'd smile. "It's also why they'll always surprise you, why they'll always matter, why one of them could anchor a storm that should have killed him. Because they're powerful? No, because they're human. And being human means choosing connection over safety, choosing to feel over feeling nothing, choosing to dance in the storm rather than hide from it. And that's enough?" Saylyra would look out at the city that had feared her, then celebrated her, then simply accepted her as part of the beautiful chaos. That's everything. On Letherian, in the Lumino Belt, under domes that held back toxic atmospheres and harbored impossible love stories, they still tell the story of the alien girl and the technician who couldn't dance. They tell it as proof that humanity's weakness is actually its strength, that choosing to feel, to care, to stay, even when it costs everything, can change the universe. That love, irrational and inconvenient and utterly human, is the force that anchors storms. And every week, in the center of the plaza, you can see them. Still dancing, still impossible, still proving that the best things in life are the ones that shouldn't work but somehow do, because someone chose to stay when everyone else ran away. And that choice changed everything. In the end, Evan and Sayalira didn't prove that love conquers all. They proved something far less tidy and far more human. That choosing to stay even when you're terrified can alter the trajectory of an entire world. Humanity's miracle was never technology or courage. It was the absurd willingness to hold someone else's storm as if it were your own. So now the question turns to you. If someone handed you a storm, not metaphorically, but the real dangerous glowing kind, would you step closer or step away? What part of yourself have you been suppressing because someone once convinced you it was too much? And maybe the most uncomfortable one, who could you become if someone simply stayed by your side instead of running? If you made it here, write Anchor in the comments so we know you danced with us until the final beat. Tell us your city. We love watching this universe connect across real skies. And if the story stirred something in you, subscribe, like, hype it in the comments. Share it with someone who might need a reminder that storms aren't always meant to be feared. And when the screen shows the next video card, follow it. The story continues, and so do we.